My name's Ethan. I'm 24 and I fix cars for a living. It's not a job that earns a title or a suit, but it keeps my bills paid and my fridge full. I live in a creaky old house just outside Portland, Oregon. The one my folks left behind after their car accident 6 years back. It's nothing fancy. The paint's flaking. The porch moans when you step on it, and out back there's a garage where I spend most nights buried under the hood of some rusted old car I swear I'll restore one day. The neighborhood's quiet, the kind where folks wave while mowing their lawns, but I mostly keep to myself. Always have. It's easier that way. Most days roll by the same. I wake up, pull on a flannel and jeans, head to the shop to battle oil leaks and busted transmissions, then come home to a microwave dinner and the crackle of an old radio humming rock classics. I don't complain. It's a life, simple mine. But sometimes when the house gets too still, I swear I can hear my parents' voices again or smell Mom's cooking lingering in the walls. That's when I retreat to the garage, turn the music up, and lose myself under the hood of that '78 Chevy that hasn't run in years. It keeps the quiet from swallowing me whole. That night felt no different, or so I thought. Late November. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Rain drummed the roof steady since dusk. I was in the garage, hands slick with grease, fighting a stubborn bolt on the Chevy's engine block. The radio was halfway through a Springsteen song, the lone bulb overhead flickering like it was running on hope. Close to 11 p.m., I heard it, a knock at the front door. Faint. I froze, wrench in hand. Nobody knocks on my door, not this late. Thought maybe I imagined it. Then it came again, softer, hesitant. I wiped my hands, killed the radio, and stepped into the rain. The porch light spilled a weak glow across the wet yard. I opened the door. A girl, maybe my age, stood there, trembling under the overhang. Her dark hair clung to her face, soaked through. Jacket smeared with mud and clinging like a second skin. No bag, no umbrella, nothing. Just her, looking like she'd crawled out of a storm. "Sorry," she said, her voice small but steady, teeth chattering. "I know it's late, but can I come in?" I got lost and my phone's dead. I blinked, caught off guard. She didn't seem dangerous, but I wasn't the kind of guy who let strangers waltz into his house. Still, her eyes, wide brown, raw with fear, held me there. Not pleading exactly, but heavy. Yeah," I said, stepping aside. "Come in. You're soaked." She nodded and slipped past me, dripping onto the hardwood, the air filled with the smell of rain and wet fabric. I grabbed a clean towel from the bathroom and handed it to her. "Here, dry off. I'll get you something warm." "Thanks," she murmured, wrapping the towel tight around her shoulders. Her fingers shook as she gripped the fabric, trying to stop her shivering. I headed to the kitchen, set a kettle on the stove, and dug out a dusty box of chamomile tea I hadn't touched in years. While the water heated, I glanced back at her. She was studying the room, the peeling wallpaper, the mismatched furniture, the pile of car magazines cluttering the coffee table. "Nice place," she said, and though it wasn't true, I could tell she meant it. "I'm Ethan," I said, leaning against the counter. "Sophie," she replied, meeting my eyes for the first time. And yeah, I know. "I look like a drowned rat. Long story?" I asked, pouring the tea. She gave a small laugh, thin, tired, more relief than humor. "Maybe short version?" "I was hitching a ride back to college, University of Oregon. I'm a senior there." The guy driving got the wrong idea. We argued, and he kicked me out a few miles back. Didn't realize it was this far from anywhere. She took the cup I handed her, fingers brushing mine briefly before she sipped. "Saw your light on. Figured it was my best chance." I nodded slowly. "Rough night, you okay? He didn't hurt you or anything?" "No," she said quickly. "Just scared me. Left me in the rain." I gestured to the old gas heater humming in the corner. "Sit there. Warm up." She shuffled over, still clutching the towel, and sank into the worn armchair. The heater cast a soft orange glow across her face. That's when I noticed she was pretty. Not polished or showy, just quietly so. Like she didn't know it herself. Her gaze lifted to meet mine. "You live here alone?" "Since I was 18, I said, keeping it short. "Parents passed. Car accident. Been on my own since." Her face softened, but she didn't say the usual sorry. Just nodded like she understood more than she wanted to admit. "You're kind of a saint for this, you know." I snorted, tossing her a blanket from the couch. "Hardly. Just don't like watching people freeze." She smiled faintly, pulling it around her shoulders. "You can crash on the sofa tonight," I said. "I'll drive you to a bus stop in the morning." "Thanks, Ethan," she said, her voice low, sincere. I didn't think I'd feel safe tonight. I shrugged, switching off the kitchen light. Get some rest. As I headed toward my room, her voice stopped me, soft as the rain outside. Ethan, I'm glad it was your door I knocked on. I didn't turn around, just nodded. Yeah, me too. The next morning, the scent of rain still lingered in the air, clinging to everything like a memory. The house was quiet except for the faint creak of the floorboards as I made my way to the kitchen. I glanced toward the sofa, half expecting it to be empty, like she'd never been there at all. But there she was, curled beneath the old blanket, one arm tucked beneath her head, breathing slow and steady. My hoodie hung loose on her frame, sleeves swallowed her wrists. For a moment, I just watched the morning light spill through the blinds and catch on her dark hair. Then I shook it off and started the coffee maker. The hiss of brewing woke her, and she stirred, blinking against the light. Morning, she said, her voice rough but warm. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, the blanket pooling around her waist. You always up this early? Habit, I said, pouring 2 mugs. Shop opens at 8. You take cream or sugar? Black's fine, she said, standing and stretching. She padded into the kitchen, barefoot, still swallowed in my hoodie. Smells good. You do this every day? Pretty much, I said, pulling a loaf of bread and some eggs from the fridge. Not much of a chef, but I can handle eggs and toast, I said. You hungry? Her eyes lit up. Starving. I owe you big time for this. We sat at the little kitchen table eating scrambled eggs and slightly burnt toast. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It felt natural, like we'd done this 100 times before. She asked about the garage, how I got into fixing cars. I told her about dropping out of community college at 18, after my parents died, and taking over their house so it wouldn't get sold. It's not much, I said, nodding at the chipped walls, but it's home. Sophie listened quietly, her fork paused halfway to her mouth. That's heavy, Ethan, losing them so young. And you just kept going. Didn't have much of a choice, I said, shrugging. What about you? You're at U of O, right? Art major? Yeah, she said softly. Painting. My parents think it's a waste of time. They've got my whole life mapped out. Business school, corporate job, the works. Everything except what I actually want. She stared down at her plate, tracing its edge with her fork. Being here, even just for a night, it's like I can breathe. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. After breakfast, I grabbed my keys. Come on, I'll drive you to the bus stop. You'll be back by noon. The ride was short. 10 minutes through wet streets lined with evergreens. Sophie gazed out the window, fingers tapping the rim of her mug, the one she'd insisted on bringing along. We talked about little things. Her favorite painter, some guy named Rothko. My obsession with rebuilding old engines. How Portland rain never really stops. At the bus stop, she turned to me, brown eyes catching the pale morning light. Hey, Ethan. What if I came back? Not because I'm lost, just to talk. Would that be okay? I blinked, caught off guard. You want to hang out in my falling apart house again? She grinned, a real one this time. Yeah, I kinda do. I'll stock up on tea then, I said, leaning against the truck. Just don't make it a habit. I'm not running a motel. Deal, she laughed, stepping toward the bus. But as she walked away, something shifted in my chest, like a gear slipping out of place. The truck felt too quiet on the drive home, and the sofa looked emptier than it should have. That weekend, she came back. I was elbow deep in a carburetor when I heard the knock. There she was, rain on her jacket, holding a paper bag from a bakery in town. Thought you might like donuts, she said with a smile. Got any more of that tea? I wiped my hands on a rag, grinning despite myself. You're gonna bankrupt me with all this tea drinking. She laughed and followed me inside, and just like that, it started. She came back the next weekend, then the one after that. She'd sit on a stool in the garage watching me work, asking about spark plugs and oil filters. I taught her how to change a tire, laughing when she smeared grease on her cheek. We made pancakes one morning and she burned half of them, blamed my crappy pan while I teased her about her cooking. Bit by bit, she opened up. Her parents ran a real estate company downtown, expected her to join after graduation. They've got my life planned to the minute, she said one night, curled on the sofa with a mug in her hands. What I study, who I marry, where I live. But out here with you, I feel like me, not their version of me. I looked at her, at the way the lamplight brushed her face, and felt something I hadn't in years, not since before my parents died. Like the house wasn't just a place to sleep anymore, it was starting to feel alive. "You're always welcome here," I said, my voice lower than I meant. "Long as you don't burn my kitchen down," she laughed, tossing a pillow at me. "No promises. Those weekends became ours." She'd show up with a sketchbook or a bag of takeout and we'd talk for hours, about her art, my cars, or nothing at all. I started listening for her knock, the way her laughter filled the empty corners of the house that used to echo only with silence. I never said it out loud, but I began to dread the moment she'd leave, the way the quiet would seep back in like a slow leak. Days blurred together, and Sophie became part of my rhythm, like a song I didn't realize I'd been humming until I couldn't stop. The garage still smelled of oil and rain, but now there were traces of her. Coffee grounds, the citrus of her shampoo, the sketchbook she always forgot on my workbench. I'd catch myself smiling for no reason, thinking about the way she wrinkled her nose when she laughed or how seriously she'd study a spark plug like it was a piece of art. I didn't call it anything. Not love, not yet. It was just us, two people filling in the cracks of something broken. But I wasn't blind. She was a college kid with parents and plans. I was a mechanic with grease on his hands and a roof that leaked every spring. Whatever we had, it felt delicate, like holding a flame too close to the wind. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind of storm that makes the world sound hollow. Rain hammered the garage roof while I wrestled with a stubborn fuel line on a '65 Mustang. The single bulb overhead buzzed and flickered, throwing restless shadows across the concrete floor. Then I heard the side door creak open. Sophie stood there, rain dripping from her hair, holding 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate from the diner down the road. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, eyes bright. "Thought you could use a break," she said, setting the cups on the workbench. "It's a monsoon out there." I wiped my hands on a rag, grinning. "You walked through that just to bring me cocoa. You're gonna catch a cold." "Worth it," she said, hopping onto her usual stool. She pushed 1 cup toward me, steam curling between us. "Besides, I like watching you work." "You get this look like you're trying to fix the whole world," I laughed, taking a sip. The chocolate was thick and sweet, warming all the way down. "World peace would be easier than this fuel line. You sticking around or just playing delivery girl?" She tilted her head, eyes catching the light. "I'm staying. Unless you're kicking me out." "Never," I said too quickly, turning back to the car before she could see my face heat up. We fell into our usual rhythm, her asking questions, me explaining things I'd said 100 times but somehow sounded new when she listened. She leaned in, pointing to a hose. "What's that one do?" "Coolant," I said, steadying my voice. "Keeps the engine from overheating." "Like you," she said softly, teasing, but there was something underneath it. I looked up. Her eyes were on me, not the car. The air shifted, thick, electric. "Sophie," I started, but she was already stepping closer, boots scuffing the concrete. "Ethan," she whispered, "I've never felt like this before. Not with anyone." My heart hammered. She took another step, close enough that I could see the rain still clinging to her lashes. "When I'm here," she said, voice trembling. "It's like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Before I could answer, she leaned in, her lips brushing mine, soft, unsure, real. It wasn't a movie moment. No perfect angle, no fireworks. Just the quiet taste of chocolate and rain. I dropped the wrench, the clang echoing through the garage as I kissed her back. For a second, time just stopped. When we pulled apart, her eyes were wide, almost startled. "If I said I wanted to stay here forever," she whispered, "what would you say?" I swallowed hard, my hand still resting on her waist. "I'd say you're crazy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't want that too." I laughed, nervous, trying to shake off the weight of it. "Sophie, you're from a whole different world. Your parents, your life. How does this even work?" She shook her head, fingers brushing my jaw. "I don't care about any of that. I care about this. About us." Her eyes searched mine. "Don't you?" "Yeah," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop it. "More than I should." That night we didn't leave the garage. We sat on an old blanket, backs against the Mustang, talking until the rain softened to a whisper. She told me about her father's real estate empire, her mother's charity galas, the life they'd mapped out without asking her what she wanted. I told her about the accident, how losing my parents made me stop letting people in because it hurt too much when they left. Somewhere in those hours we crossed a line, not just the kiss, but something deeper. Like we'd both quietly decided this wasn't just chance. When she fell asleep against my shoulder, I didn't move. Didn't want to. For the first time in years, the silence didn't scare me, because it wasn't silence anymore and it was full of her. The morning after the kiss, I woke with Sophie still beside me, her head resting against my arm. The old blanket twisted around us on the cold garage floor. The rain had stopped, leaving a chill that crept through the cracks, and the Mustang stood above us like a quiet witness. For a long moment, I just watched her sleep, the gray light soft against her face. My chest ached, but not from emptiness, from the strange peace that had finally found me. I didn't want to move, didn't want to break whatever magic hung in that moment. But life doesn't freeze for you just because you want it to. We got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table like nothing had shifted, even though everything had. When her hand brushed mine, reaching for the sugar, she smiled, small and secret, like we shared something the rest of the world would never understand. "Last night was real, right?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Yeah," I said, tracing the rim of my mug with my thumb. "Real as it gets." I wanted to ask what this meant, where it could possibly go, but the words caught somewhere between fear and hope. She was still Sophie, the college girl with paint under her nails and a life already mapped out for her. And I was still Ethan, the man fixing cars and trying to outrun ghosts. But for a little while, none of that mattered. Then it all came apart. 3 days after the kiss, we were in the kitchen laughing over a failed batch of pancakes. She'd flipped one straight onto the floor, and I was teasing her when the sound of tires crunching over gravel cut through the laughter. I looked out the window. A sleek black Mercedes sat in my driveway, gleaming like it didn't belong anywhere near this place. My stomach sank. The doorbell rang, sharp and commanding. Sophie froze, spatula halfway in the air. "Who's that?" she asked, though she already knew. When I opened the door, a man stood there in a tailored coat, his graying hair slicked back, his eyes cold enough to slice through the air. He looked at me like I was something beneath him. "I'm James Riley," he said, clipped and practiced. "Sophie's father. I believe my daughter's here." Sophie stepped into the room behind me, pale as paper. "Dad," she whispered. "How did you—" "The tracking app," he cut in, raising a hand. "You've been gone 3 days. Your mother's beside herself." His gaze swept over me, the grease on my hands, the worn floorboards. "Get your things. We're leaving." I stood there useless as she reached for her jacket. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Ethan's been good to me," she said softly. "He helped when I was stranded." Mr. Riley's lips twitched, but it wasn't gratitude. "I appreciate that," he said flatly. "But this ends now." Sophie's eyes finally met mine, full of something raw and breaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. Then she turned and followed him out. The Mercedes door slammed, and just like that she was gone. The taillights disappeared into the fog, and the house was too quiet again. Only this time it hurt. Her coffee mug sat on the table, half full. The couch still smelled like her shampoo. In the garage, her sketchbook lay open on the workbench, the unfinished outline of the Mustang staring up at me like a ghost. I buried myself in work, stayed late at the shop, tried to drown in the noise of engines and tools. But every hum, every creak, every shadow reminded me of her. 3 weeks passed. No word, no call, no number to reach her. Maybe her dad had taken her phone. Maybe she'd just decided it wasn't worth the fight. Either way, the emptiness was heavier than ever. 3 weeks after Sophie left, the house felt like it used to. Quiet, still, and cold. But now I knew what that silence was missing, and knowing that was worse than the loneliness ever had been. The coffee mugs were washed and stacked away, her sketchbook tucked in a drawer I couldn't bring myself to open, but the air still carried her, faint and heavy like she'd only just left. Some nights I'd catch myself glancing at the door, waiting for a knock that never came. I didn't know if she'd forgotten me, or if her father had folded her back into that glossy world of control and expectation. Either way, I told myself the same lie. People leave. That's what they do. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of damp November night where the air clings to your skin more than it falls from the sky. I was in the garage, sanding rust off the Chevy's fender, the rasp of the sandpaper loud in the stillness. I hadn't even turned the radio on. The quiet felt cleaner that way. Then I heard it, a soft knock at the front door. My heart stuttered. That sound, I'd know it anywhere. I wiped my hands on my jeans, pulse climbing, and walked toward the door. She was there. Sophie, standing under the porch light, her hair damp and curling, the same old jacket zipped up to her chin. No luggage, no luxury car. Just her, holding a to-go cup of tea from the diner down the road. Her eyes met mine, steady and bright in a way they hadn't been before. "Hey," she said softly. "I brought tea. Figured you might be running low." For a moment I just stared, caught somewhere between disbelief and relief. "Sophie," I managed, voice rough. "What are you doing here?" She stepped closer, the porch creaking under her boots. "I'm sorry I left like that. No goodbye, no explanation. I didn't want to." She took a breath, her voice trembling but sure. "I told my dad everything. Not about us, but about me. What I want, who I want to be. He didn't take it well, but I'm done living by his script. I want to be here. With you." I blinked, the words settling slow and heavy in my chest. "You sure about this? Your family, your school, Portland's not your world." She smiled. Small, defiant, beautiful. "It is now. I'm not running anymore. I'm choosing this." She lifted the cup between us, steam curling into the cold night. "So, are you going to let me in, or should I camp out here?" I laughed, the tension in my chest breaking open. "Get in here." She brushed past me, and just like that, the house felt different, warmer, alive again, like it had been waiting for her all along. We sat in the living room, her on the sofa, me in the armchair, the heater humming between us. She told me about the fight, how her father had cut her off when she refused to follow his plan. "No trust fund, no fancy apartment," she said, shrugging. "But I've got a job at an art supply store and a couch at a friend's place. And I'm free, Ethan. For the first time, I'm free." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "And you came back here onto a guy with a leaky roof and a fridge full of leftovers." She laughed, setting her tea on the table. "Yes, because you saw me when I was lost and you didn't look away. Because this—" She gestured at the chipped walls, the cluttered space. "Feels more like home than any mansion ever did." I didn't answer. I just crossed the room and pulled her close. She melted against me, her face pressed to my chest. And for a long moment we stood there, the rain tapping against the glass while the rest of the world faded away. "You're not sleeping on the sofa this time," I murmured. Her eyes found mine, a smile tugging at her lips. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that. That night we didn't talk about the future or make promises we couldn't keep. We just started, right there, in the quiet of my old, creaky house. Over the next few weeks, Sophie moved in little by little. A toothbrush here, a sketchbook there, her art supplies spilling into the garage beside my tools. We built something small but real. Morning coffee, late night talks, laughter that lingered longer than the silence ever had. I never thought a knock in the rain could change everything. But Sophie did. She wasn't just the girl who showed up needing help. She was the one who stayed, who turned a house into a home, and the quiet into something that finally felt alive. Looking back, I know now it was never just about the kiss or the nights we shared. It was about the choice and the quiet, everyday kind and to stay, to love without a plan, without a map. Sometimes it's just a knock on your door, a hand you take when you could have walked away. And for us, that was enough.